This week on London Real, we have Philip McKernan, who speaks about the importance of living an authentic and meaningful life.
Success is manufactured in the mind while happiness is cultivated in the soul. Just speak your truth, your vulnerable truth, your authenticity. Just say what's on, not your mind. I don't give a shit what's on your mind. I want to know what you feel.
People say they're busy. Whenever someone says they're busy, it means they don't have time for you, is one way of sub-communicating that.
And that's a fair point, but I would go a step further and say that they don't even have time for themselves. I'd let go of chasing opportunities. And what's happening is possibilities are opening up for me. The biggest bully you'll ever meet is not the guy or the girl in the schoolyard that bullied you for years, or the bully that you are to them for years. The greatest bully you'll ever meet is the bully that you meet in the mirror every single day.
London Real presents Philip McKernan, Believe in You.
Who are you seeking validation from today?
London Real Academy. Build the best you.
When I go in and look at a person or a business, I want to hear him talk about his dreams.
Am I living in alignment to the way I want to be living? And there's a feeling you get if you're not.
A community of action-oriented people that will keep you accountable to your goals. Sign up now for a free 30-day trial. London Real, sponsored by Bulletproof.
You know, I meet a lot of special people on London Real, but every now and then you meet someone that's just a little bit extra special. And this is one of those guys. And that's Philip McKernan, and he is about creating a life that means something. And on top of this show, I also got the real honor and pleasure to host Philip in our studios with a group of 30 of the London Real Academy founding members, and he spent 3 hours with us and really pulled some heartstrings. You know, he had a lot of us crying, and a lot of us really talking about deep issues like our relationship with money and so many other of our issues that we didn't even know we had. And you know, Philip, you can see in this episode, is a really thoughtful guy, a really deep guy, but also a guy that's not afraid of showing you that he's got his own problems too, you know, and so it's just honest and refreshing to have someone like Philip on the show. I had the pleasure of seeing him speak out in Napa, California in April, and just having him here was just a really nice completion of that whole moment. Philip was then off to go to Ireland, where he does a retreat with people and really shows them, you know, what Ireland's all about, whether it comes to the magnificent West Coast and the food and just really getting in touch with yourself. And, you know, Philip talks about something that I try to think about sometimes, and that's trying to get your head and your heart, you know, coupled back together. So many times in our lives we're doing things for the reasons we don't even understand anymore, and we just need to take a step back and listen to our heart and find out if that's really what we want to do. And Philip is the perfect guy if you're not sure if you're doing the right thing, to really listen to and just get some of his ideas. So I'm really honored to you know, introduce you to him, and I think he's a really special guy that we're gonna just see a lot more from in the future. So there you go, that is Philip. If you're watching this show, most likely you're right now on the London Real Academy, and that's where you can watch all of our shows for free. You just sign in with your social media login. But there's more happening behind the scenes. There's actually a whole incredible group of Founding 500 members, and they're all around the world. And what we do is we push ourselves to be better. We push ourselves to take action and be accountable. And it's just amazing, this group that we put together. I never thought it would happen. I knew you London Reelers were incredible, but this group is like the creme de la creme. And on top of all of that social networking and the meetups that we do at the studio, you also get bonus content content like success secrets, even from this show with Philip McKernan that you can only get as an Academy member. You also get access to our live episodes. You could have watched this episode live, and exclusive content like our day at the Ritz with Dan Pena, the webinars that I teach, and so much more. You know, you can be in there within 30 seconds if you'd like to go check out what's happening. And also there's a 30-day risk-free money-back guarantee, so you can give it a try. If you're not 120% satisfied, then no problem, we'll refund your money, and you can go your separate ways, but I think you're gonna love it in there. Like I said, the energy is incredible. If you just go onto our social media activity feed, it's just constantly people pushing their goals, talking about failures, being vulnerable, and being accountable. So you must check it out. It really will change your life. It's actually changing my life as we speak. And there was a group of those people at the event with Philip, and Philip came up to me, he said, Brian, it's just an incredible group of people you have here. And he's like, there's something going on here with London Real and what you're doing. And it's nice to hear that stuff from, you know, real people like Phil. So again, to Philip, thank you so much for coming to the studio and letting us really get deep and under your skin. And now I will leave you with the man himself, Philip McKernan.
We're so consumed by attachment. And what I do is I challenge people to consider what they believe on a very fundamental level about religion, about money, about work, about where they live, who they are, who they should be. Because here's my theory. I think you all know exactly what you want to do. Well, I'm never going to be like my father. I'm never going to be poorer. I'm never. Maybe it's time to stop running away from, let's just use the bear analogy, stop running away from the bear. Maybe it's time to start moving towards the things that I want to do. Because you know the problem with fear is it doesn't need Red Bull. It doesn't need caffeine. It doesn't need water. It doesn't need air. And when you're running and spending all of your life running from the very thing that scares the shit out of you, and when you finally have to stop because you're getting old or you're getting tired or you need sustenance or you need water, and you stop to take a breath and you look around, the bastard's right behind you. So if you've got a fear about something, what you'll find is it's not a fear about the bungee jumping. It's not a fear about money. It's not a fear about success. If you go far enough back, you'll find out that it's an old fear. And it's just showing itself in a different way. Because I used to set a lot of goals and I used to achieve them. And what I often say is I'd achieve a goal or a series of goals, and how I kind of describe it is I get to the top of a mountain, I get to the top of a peak, and I'd get there and I'd lift myself up and I'd stand at the top of that peak and I'd look around and go, wow, was that it? Shit, I thought it was going to be, happier. I thought it was going to be a better feeling. Anybody experience that? But your vulnerability, which is your truth, is extraordinary magic. Stop making this journey about you. You're a part of it. But the bigger picture is you're here to serve other people.
London Real Set Design by Timothy Olton.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Philip McKernan, who speaks around the world about the importance of overcoming personal obstacles, gaining clarity, and cultivating the confidence to believe in yourself. You've worked with a Canadian Olympic team in London, TV personalities and entrepreneurs, billionaires to people who've gone bankrupt and everything in between. You speak about people's dysfunctional relationship with money and how their inability to get in touch with their own deep intuition inhibits them from gaining the clarity they need to live an authentic and meaningful life. Philip, welcome to London Real.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You know, you come at a huge advantage to anyone who sat in that seat before, because I watched you at your best last night. You were here in the studios. We had 25 people here from London Real Academy and a few others. We had the chairs, we had the microphones, and you came in not knowing anything about the audience. I know you didn't have anything scripted and no plan, and for 2 hours you captivated everyone and you took us all on this emotional journey, and everyone seemed to get a little bit something different from what you said. I know I'm still processing some of the things you said, and I want to just ask you, what's that like to do, and how did that feel being here last night and doing what you do?
Wow. Well, you can probably see it. I suppose I haven't stopped to consider it. You know, people came up to me last night that were very complimentary in the context of what I offered them in terms of philosophy, what I offered them in the context of questioning their own existence, their own life. And I think, you know, I try not to make it too much about myself. I try not to sit back and think too much and feel too much about what it means to me, because it is all about the audience. It has to be about the audience. But to me, it's just, you know, people say things like, you know, automatic responses like, oh, it's an honor and it's a privilege. And I think sometimes it's true, but sometimes it's just a heady response. To me, there's a part of me that cannot believe what I do. And I don't mean can't believe that I'm so good, or that's not what I'm talking. I just can't believe that I'm doing what I do today around the world. I just never, ever, ever would have imagined this. I mean, I never, ever would have imagined I'd be doing what I'm doing today, including sitting here today in this studio. So to me, it's not about me. It's if people refer to me as somebody who has a gift, if I do or not, that's not really for me to decide. And if I do, it's on loan. It's on loan. I've been given it for a small period of my life. And my job is to make sure that I use that gift in a really, really authentic, passionate way, and pass it on to other people as I do so.
I think I was talking to your wife afterwards last night, Pauline, and we were talking about, it's just your intuition. You really seem to feel the vibrations of different people in the room. And I think I first saw you do that was out in Napa at Jason Gaynard's event, Mastermind Talks. Mm-hmm. And you know, you asked this whole room of entrepreneurs that question, and we'll get to that later. It's not as important what the question was, but you saw the reactions people had. And I could have swore 2 people gave you almost the same answer. And one of them, you were like, okay, I believe you. And one of them, you were like, no, there's something else going on here. And immediately, and I saw you do that last night, and you seem to kind of know right away if someone is giving, I think you said sometimes an answer from the head or an answer from the heart. Tell me about your intuition and that difference between the head and the heart.
Yeah, people often ask me, say, how do you do what you do? Because my work is very intuitive. So if I'm in a coaching environment or in a retreat setting, it's very much about intuition. It's about feeling your way through the work as opposed to thinking and strategically planning it and using tactics to bring people on a journey. And there's a little bit of that, but a lot of it is just sitting there and not just listening, but hearing the person. But most importantly, feeling what they go through. Now, the emotional cost on me personally, as a result of that, is quite significant. So last night I was drained, not just tired, not just because it's warm in London right now and we're under lights, etc. But I was emotionally drained. But I'm not complaining about that. I mean, in a beautiful way. But I think we've got this incredible gift, all of us, to be able to feel what's going on. I've never used this as an example, but let me give you an example that I think may relate to you or other people who are watching this. Is every year I go and I bring a group of people and we go to a developing world and we work with orphans, okay? So typically it's Spanish-speaking countries, and we were in Guatemala, Peru, and then recently we went to, or we're going to India later this year. And you know, I remember people saying, oh, can you speak Spanish? And I went, no. And they said, are you going to learn Spanish now that you're going down to work with kids? And I said, no. And I'm never going to learn Spanish or any other language for that matter. I can hardly work with English. Never mind another language. But here's my point: when we got down there to work with these young children, and it was basically 3 or 4 days working with these kids, and the idea behind it is we work with these kids. We give them time. We don't give them gear. We don't give them stuff. We hold them. We play with them. We engage with them. We look with them. We laugh with them. We cry with them to show them that they matter, even for a day. Okay, to show them that they matter even for a day. But when you don't have language, okay, when you can't converse from a vocal point, you have to observe everything. You have to kind of feel the emotions. So I remember one day, I'll give you an example of this. I remember one day walking around a corner, and there was a young boy, and he was like curled up in the corner, and he was just his head down. And I went up to him, and I just put my hand on his leg, and I knelt down beside him, and he looked at me, and there was tears streaming down his face, and he was saying something over and over and over again. And I went to kind of put my arms around him, and he retracted. So I wanted to be respectful of that, so I kind of stayed away from him. And then the crying deepened to a point where it wasn't even a mental thought. It was just like, this kid needs something. So I literally grabbed him and I pulled him up. And then I realized as he unfolds, he's a big guy. He's 15 years old or whatever he was. And I had to almost drag him over, and I sat down, and he put one leg here, wrapped himself around me and cried and was saying the same thing over and over. And I called the interpreter over, and I said, "What is he saying?" And he says, "I want my mummy." And he was saying it over and over again. But the point I'm trying to make is that I engaged with him almost like he was my own son. And I didn't have any idea what he was saying. So we get so caught up in words. And if we just shut our mouths just for a period of time and just observe somebody and allow ourselves move from this mental space down into a more intuitive place, down to a place of feeling, we'll understand ourselves so much more. And we'll understand everybody around us in a way that we are almost incapable of doing when we're up here. And it changes everything because our conversation changes. And we'll end up having more realer conversations, for want of a better term, with the people around us, and therefore deepening everything in our lives.
You have a quote that I saw in your bag earlier, and it said something about, success is in the head and happiness is in the heart. How does that go? And is that a pretty good way of describing the way you look at the world?
Yeah, I think the quote is, "Success is manufactured in the mind while happiness is cultivated in the soul." And I think that success in the traditional sense, like the way we see success today, is very much around money, and it's around materialism, and it's around businesses and stuff like that. And this is a very, very beautiful, incredible tool. I wouldn't say beautiful. It's a very tactical tool, meaning your mind. And it's a great thing to use in order to attain and to strategize and create a tactical plan and execute. So that's what we call mindset. But I believe mindset has been put ahead of what I have dubbed soul set. And it's almost replaced and overshadowed intuition, gut, soul, whatever you want to call it. Let's not get caught up in one word because that might turn people off. But this is the voice, and it's about, to me, it's about, the head leans forward. It's about bringing the head back, but allowing the heart to lead, allowing the soul to lead, and then using this to back it up. And it's like a secondary device. But how many of us are living up here? I mean, honestly, there are so many people living up here in the world today that there are so many human beings that don't even need bodies. If we just put two little legs on their heads, they'd be able to run around, and we'd have heads running around, but it would save them a lot of time and energy. They wouldn't have to look after the rest of their body. We wouldn't have to wear jeans. We wouldn't have to wear shoes because they don't use the rest of their body. And I just think there's so much more to the world. It's the same principle. I don't know what the stats are in terms of, communication is 70%, body language, and 30%, voice or something like that. Same principle. I think most of it's driven by emotion, but we've allowed the head to take over. And it was Einstein who said something along the lines of, the intuitive mind is a beautiful gift, but it's become the servant to the it's become secondary to the intuitiveness has become secondary to the mind. The only thing I would disagree with Einstein is that there's no such thing as an intuitive mind. I just don't agree. I think it doesn't exist. The mind cannot be intuitive. And I know people will argue with that with me, and they can do that all day long if they want to. The mind is the mind. Intuition is here. It's now how they communicate is very, very important. But if you lead with this and this comes second, I guarantee you'll make better decisions. You'll feel better about yourself. You'll be more aligned. You'll surround yourselves with better things. You'll be more aligned as a human being in the work that you do, the relationship with yourself, and the relationships with people around you.
I feel like we're all being taught to use the mind more these days. And with every new tech advancement seems to be, it's the mind, it's the mind, it's the mind, not to mention all the things that distract our mind. But I feel like I was grown up and taught your mind is what's going to get you ahead in this world. Your mind is going to get you the job and the this and the recognition. And so I know I'm very mind oriented, but it feels like as a population, as a species, we're going the mind way and not down, which feels like we're going up.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it's increasing even more.
It is, and I think it's been driven partly by this insatiable appetite for, you know, the expansion of the mind and the mindset and all the. I pretty much my one of my predictions is in about 20 years from now we'll be looking back and say we had it all wrong, we had it assways. We should have been honoring the intuition and using the mind purely as the mind is a computer. It's just a laptop. That's all it is, and yet we give it so much credence. I mean, it's extraordinary. It's a brilliant piece of equipment, but that's all it is. The intuition, the soul, is just so unique to each of us. It's our blueprint. But the problem is when you follow your soul, it often requires you to stand alone. But we don't want to stand alone. Yeah. We want to fit in. And I know a lot of people say, no, I don't want to fit in. But if you really sit back and think about it, we want to fit into society. We don't want to stand out too much. And when you follow your soul, you've got to stand out, because if you honor it, it typically brings you in a way that leads you away from the societal push to follow success in the way that it's been deemed that success should unfold. And the other thing is that we're absorbing massive amounts of information. So the more information that we absorb, we're moving up into our brain. So we're absorbing huge amounts of information. And as I said last night, and it's just something I've been sitting with recently, is as we absorb information, we're not allowing that information to move down to a place of knowledge and move further down to a place of wisdom and move even further down to a place of awareness, because we're too busy reading the next book, right, and the next book and the next book. And the interesting thing is, I've realized that people who absorb information, they're not absorbing information because they want to really, really be knowledgeable and be wise and be aware. They're reading information mainly because they're scarce. We're almost afraid not to read the next book. I'm not saying books are a waste of time, I'm not. But we're almost afraid if we're not reading the next coolest, sexiest book, we're missing out. How many people are walking this earth feeling that they're missing out? People say to me, oh, I'm going to be 40 next month. I said, okay, great. Are you worried? Oh, I hate the idea of being 40. And what you'll realize, it's not about being 40. It's about that they are worried that life has passed them by or is passing them by. It's not about the age. It's about how they feel about themselves in the context of the life they've lived.
I did a TED Talk in January, and I said research is procrastination in disguise, to a certain extent, because I felt myself doing that in the past. And sometimes I do it just for a dopamine loop, I believe, as well, that new info buzz. And I was up in Scotland last year in November, and I was up there for a retreat, and my room didn't have Wi-Fi. And so, God forbid, or any 3G, and so I couldn't get my dopamine fix when I go to bed, and for a few hours I had to be with my thoughts. God forbid, right? And I know you are a big fan of unplugging and really just being with yourself, the decisions you made, and pondering them. And you even said something fascinating last night, which I had to agree with you with, is that even meditation is a way of not engaging with the decisions you make and with yourself. And I agree with that. I meditate every morning, but when I'm in a meditative state, I'm actually doing something or trying to achieve something. So in a way, I'm not actually just sitting there contemplating all of the decisions. And so I was just wondering if I could get your thoughts on taking a step back and, taking a step back from the goals, from the busyness, and from all of that information.
But we can't do that, Brian. I mean, that goes against everything. I mean, busyness is a badge of honor.
Especially in America.
Yeah, well, I mean, in America, but also a lot of other places. And it's become this, how are you? Oh, I'm super busy. It's become this almost need. It's almost like busyness equals, success. Busyness equals business. It doesn't.
Right. And people say they're busy. Whenever someone says they're busy, it means they don't have time for you, is one way of sub-communicating that.
Yeah.
I'm so busy. I'm so busy that it's not important for me to engage with you right now.
And that's a fair point, but I would go a step further and say that they don't even have time for themselves.
Okay.
They're so busy, they don't even have time for themselves. Think about that for a second. They don't have time for themselves, that they want to stay so busy. I remember inviting a group of clients one day to create some space. I'll just give you a little snapshot of some of the reactions. Number one is like, what the, they just couldn't believe that I was suggesting, God forbid, as you say, that they would actually go and have some time. And one of the guys said, yeah, no, I'll give this a go. And he comes back a few months later and we had another workshop and he said, I couldn't even get into the car without turning on the radio. He said, I didn't realize how bad I was. You see, there's the problem, is that we don't realize how busy we've become. So for example, my mother suffers from arthritis. And she does a great job of trying to protect me and everyone around her by not allowing us to see how much pain she's in. So I'll ask her, how are you today? She goes, no, today's a good day. So let's just say I could plug some sensor into her, plug it into my leg to experience exactly the pain that she's having right now. I'd probably fall on the ground like a sack of potatoes in agony, because I'm a disastrous patient and I'm very, very high maintenance anyway when I'm sick. But she's become so used to the pain over so many years of her life. And I think the same thing happens with busyness. I will literally have people, many entrepreneurs, sit in front of me on big whiteboards, map out their lives. And I'm looking at this, and they'll sit in front of me and go, no, but this makes sense, and this feeds this, and this is my passion, and this business feeds. And they're trying to rationalize we don't realize how busy we've become as a society. And when I encourage people to take space, they think it's about going into the jungle and having a night in a cottage on their own, or going into the mountains and having a moment of reflection or a night of reflection. And that's physical space. But there's also emotional space, and there's also mental space. And it's in the gaps. I run an experience in Ireland once a year, and we do work, create space. Work, we create space. So we do this reflective work, we ask questions, and then we get hiking, and we go up into the mountains, and we walk 5,000-year-old green roads. And I remember a lady saying to me one day, says, can we not just stay in the classroom and do more work? I really think I'm getting somewhere. And I said, really appreciate the feedback and the comment. And get your hiking boots on, and I'll see you outside. 6 hours later, with a bit of mist on her hair and a bit of sweat pouring down her face, I look over, mud on her shoes, and I look over, and she just looks at me and goes, the growth happens in the gaps. It doesn't happen when we're busy. But we're not creating the space to allow the work that we do, the reflection that we do, the information that we absorb to land within us, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Do you encourage people to do these regular unplugging sessions? I mean, do you encourage your clients to shut off certain pieces or to be aware of how they're consuming all the time? Like you said, car stereo, on the tube you're on your email, on the this, that. Do you tell people to try to take a step back and be with their thoughts on a regular basis?
Yes and no. I think if someone, and I'm very reluctant to prescribe what people should do, and I'll tell you why. Because if I say to somebody, one of the best strategies you can do is unplug for 1 day every month, for example. And then they literally say, okay, 1 day every month, they put it in for the next 6 months, they take the day off and they sit there and go. They're not ready for it. So what I encourage people to do is, where I start with somebody is, why don't you? It's like a business person will come to me and say, I want you to help me grow my business. And I go, great. Starting point for me is, why are you doing what you're doing? What do you mean? Well, I've always done this. And I said, I appreciate that, but why are you doing it? Well, it pays the bills. So that's the legacy, that you just want to basically pay your bills the rest of your life. Is it possible that you're misaligned to what you actually do? Can we change the business, the way you do it, or do you need to align yourself into a different business to really honor your soul? I'm all about the why, okay? What you do becomes secondary. But if you understand the why, what you'll bring people to a place where they'll want to go and have an unplugging session on their own. And when they do that, they own it. They're not being told by Philip McKernan to go and spend a day a month on their own. They shift their value proposition within. They'll want to honor themselves and take some space. So as I started to take space for myself, not because it was a strategy and a tactic, but because I really wanted to have time on my own, I was inundated by family and friends and other people go, but what about your wife? What about your wife? When's she going to take some time? And I used to try to fix my wife. I used to try and push her up that mountain, to make her see her own value. She has to come to that place on her own. I said, what about her? I said, if she doesn't want to take time for herself, that shouldn't mean that I sacrifice that space either. And by honoring myself, some would call it being selfish, by honoring myself, she started to go, maybe it is okay to take time for yourself. And she has started to do the same. Without feeling guilty for being a bad mother and a bad parent and a bad wife, she's now started to take time for herself. And what happens is she feels better about herself. She comes back energized around her parenting and missing the kids and missing me. Her children are brought up in an environment where they see that their mother and their father take time for themselves. They value themselves. They value us deeply. We feel loved, but they also value themselves. So it's not being selfish. It's the most selfless thing you can do. Busy people are selfish. They're busy running around trying to help everybody, but they're helping nobody, including themselves.
Right. Get selfish a little bit.
But when we use that word, it's people treat that word with disdain. Oh, you want me to be selfish? And it goes against everything that we've been taught to believe and do in society, for the most part. I would kind of reframe it and shift it. And I would say, honor yourself. Forget about whether it's selfish or not, because selfish is almost like a judgment, potentially. It's like, honor yourself, and therefore honor people around you. If you really love your kids, if you can't motivate yourself to take time for yourself, do it for your children. Do it for people around you, because they need you. They don't need a busy fool. All I can tell you is this, and I want my kids, and one of my wishes would be my kids would stand over my grave 20, 30, 50, 100 years from now, whenever it is, and say, okay, he may not have been the richest guy in the block. He may not have left us lots of cars and real estate and property and everything else, but he was present. And when he was with me, he was with me. Because the problem in society today is that we think that quality time is actually being with people, but it's not. You can be at home, but you can still be in your brain. You can be at home and still be on your BlackBerry. You can be at home and still worrying about the office. So you may as well be in the office. You can take time and go. The amount of men I know, and it's not just men, it's women as well, men in the context of golf, who say, yeah, I go and play golf, but geez, I feel so guilty because I'm working all week and then I go and play golf and I should be with my family. They may as well not play golf because the guilt is negating any benefit of the time that they have on their own. I don't want my kids standing above my grave saying, you know, he left me lots of money, lots of real estate. I don't have to work for the rest of my life. It's kind of great now, but he was never around. And when he was always off somewhere.
Making me think more about myself. So it's going to be a personal session. Let me ask you about money. It's something that we talked about last night. It's one of the big things I noticed about you when I saw you speak in Napa, and we were in a room of 140 entrepreneurs, some of them very successful, and you asked this question, what is your relationship with money? And it was like a pin dropping in there. I just felt this energy, and I'm not even that intuitive, I don't think. And everyone, you could just, the cogs started moving, and you started talking to different people, and everyone had different relationships and dysfunctional relationships. And you know, someone was like, I'm making $10 million a year and I hate what I do. And someone said, I was born wealthy and I felt guilty ever since. And some person was this and that. And you ended up speaking with each one of those people. And I know it's obviously resonated with me. Last night, everyone said a word about money. One was freedom, one was options. I said pain. And I didn't know I was going to say that. And so, and you picked up on that and you talked about that. Tell me about that question and why you ask it and what you found it says about people.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, if I may, you said I'm not very intuitive. You are an incredibly intuitive man. But you may not always honor it. Mm. You may not listen to it. And I say that with tremendous respect. Incredibly intuitive. Incredibly intuitive. Okay. So that's a massive compliment if you choose to see it like that.
Thank you. I will be more aware of it.
And I was very intuitive. But the thing is, I just didn't listen to it. I didn't trust it. I just wasn't used to tapping into it. So if we often say things like, oh, I'm not intuitive, or it's almost like, well, I don't have intuition, and I know you didn't say that, but this is for the benefit of the listeners or the watchers, if you like. Trust me, you have it in abundance. And if you start to understand and even just feel that, say, I do have intuition. And then you start to hone in on it. And it's a small nuance, but it's very important. But back to the question. So just to create some context, last night I asked everybody in this room, I said, if you had to sit back and consider money I'd like you to sum up how you feel about money. It's a very different question than think about money. How do you feel about money in one word? And that's what you're relating to. One guy said bastard. Yeah. One guy said freedom. Somebody said options. Somebody said, used the word pain. Somebody said, trade, etc., etc. But think about the vastness of the different answers and the depth. And think about the emotion potentially behind them. But more importantly, the stories behind them. What's the story behind the pain? What's the story behind bastard? What's the story behind freedom? And on a very simple human level, it's like, a lot of people argue that money buys you freedom. I can fundamentally disagree with that. Because I know very, very, very wealthy people who never have to work another day in their life. And I'm telling you, they do not feel free. Can they walk out the door and buy a Lamborghini without thinking about it? Yes. If that is your definition of freedom, good luck. Because to me, freedom is about being able to lie in your bed at night, close your eyes with a little stinky smirk on your face, not every night. Say, shit, I'm living. I'm living. And be able to close your eyes and fall asleep with peace of mind. There is no money in this world that can buy that. None. So to me, it's about your relationship to money. How do you feel about money? Because what you think about money is irrelevant. Because you may have an affirmation that goes, I live a life of abundance and I have endless amounts of money, and you read it every single day. Yet it doesn't necessarily transform into your life. But I'm reading the affirmation. I was told to do this affirmation. I've got a vision board. I've got a $1,000 bill, and that represents the $1,000 I want to make every single day. I've set my goals. I want to be a billionaire by the time I'm 45 or whatever it is. But yet you don't feel, you're successful in societal terms, but you don't feel satisfied. So what do? Stay busy and keep chasing it? Or do you have the courage to stop? The courage to stop and say, what is that niggly feeling telling me? Maybe it's a signpost. Maybe it's my intuition saying, hey, I used to be a roar in your life many years ago. I'm like a mouse right now because you're not listening to me. You're allowing society and your brain dictate the entirety of your life. If you just listen to me for a second, what I'm trying to tell you is that you're not as happy as you tell yourself you are. You're not as happy as you pretend to be on Facebook every day. And if you stopped, maybe there's a different way of living. Maybe there's a transformation. Maybe there's a transition in your life. I'm not going to use the word change because we all freak out about change. Maybe there's a slight transition. Maybe there's a little degree turn that you need to make where you can become more aligned, more engaged, and happier in your own skin. So it's about our relationship. And when I work with couples, one of the things I say, what is your relationship to relationships? People, what are you talking about? I said, when you grew up as a kid in the home that you grew up in, what was it like? What do you remember? What did you see every day? And it is extraordinary. So picture this, you have a man and a woman typically, and one side or the other, and it comes from this place of, they come to this experience kind of with a laundry list of the shit they want to change in their partner. And then before they know it, they start witnessing their partner get in touch with their story, their relationship to relationships. And say, well, my mom used to do this, and my dad was always this, and God, I didn't know that. Wow. And that competitive edge is replaced by compassion. And then they start to understand the person. Because we can only be what we've seen. We can only be what we've witnessed to a large extent. So our relationship to relationships in the context of couples impacts and influences at a very deep level. And our relationship to money impacts us at a very deep level. And it can be such a minor comment from your dad or your mum. And we've heard the usual one, money doesn't grow on trees and all that kind of stuff. But don't get too big for your boots, and that's only for the rich people, and that's all. And this shit stays with us. And when we don't deal with it, we bring it into every single conversation. And we don't honor it, and what ends up happening is we put it this way, and I said this recently, and hopefully this makes sense, is when we get up in the morning and we hold something deep, like say money and pain, we hold that true. We go out every day into the streets of London, the streets of New York, and the streets of Vancouver, the streets of Dublin, seeking to validate how we feel about ourselves and the world. We might be thinking and saying something different, So you might walk into a meeting saying, yeah, I want to sign this $1 million contract. Absolutely, this makes sense. But you behave and you do things to honor and validate how you feel about money. It's a form of sabotage, and we don't often know we're even doing it.
Is that most of the people you do work with, is it something related to that issue? Or they might say it's the money, but is it about life choices they've made and the money represents, how they will look to their peer group? And is it oftentimes interrelated to that one question?
Most people come to me because they want to make a transition in their life. Most people come to me when they're in transition in their life. Most people come to me because they don't feel fully satisfied within their own skin, within their own lives, or within their own business. And they know at some level that something needs to change. But typically somebody will come to me for this. They come to me for, say, Y, but really X is the issue. And what I often say is what's happening off the ice or in the stadium impacts how we are on the ice or on the field. And we haven't. I mean, people used to kind of like roll their eyes to me in the context of the work that I do. They're not doing it anymore. So you've got some, very, very influential individuals that I choose not to speak about. You've got very smart companies. You've got corporations starting to realize that they talk a great game about valuing their people, but actual fact, if you really want to look after your people, help them off the ice, help them in their marriages, help them with their relationship to money, help them with their relationship to themselves, help them with their self-esteem issues. And I say self-esteem issues because everybody has them. Help them with their confidence, not conditionally and looking for the bottom line and looking because there's almost an intangibility to that. But if you really care about your people, which is the world that we're moving into right now, we're moving into a place where if you're not caring about your people, you are dead. Sourcing ethically is one thing, and social consciousness and corporate responsibility and all that kind of stuff. It's shifting into the opportunity is there, but there's the possibilities, as I love, the possibility to really care about your people. And if you help them in those areas, do you not think they're going to be more engaged, more loyal, more productive? Absolutely. So what happens off the ice has a massive impact on our ability to perform on the ice.
We had a young man last night, and he was telling you about the job he does for money and the job he does because he loves. And he was telling you about this while you were gazing deep into his soul in a McKernan type way. And I'd seen this happen before, and so I knew we were in for an interesting ride. And you started asking him questions and asking about relationships in his life, and he's like, no, it's nothing to do with my parent or this, that, and you weren't buying it right away. And at one point he gave you a quick answer when he was like, oh yeah, I'm over that, and you were like, that came from your head and not from your heart. And again, a lot of this stuff was off the ice stuff that seemed to really be carrying into a lot of his decisions. And I guess I was wondering, is that a pattern you see a lot of this? I do this for this, and I do this for love and passion. I do this to make the bills, and it's all wrapped up in an old relationship-based piece, a parental base, and people just need to work a lot of that out. Is that? Yeah. Okay.
I think that can be an awful lot of the blocks. And then when you move through that, there is the tactical and the strategic play. I mean, strategy and tactics are great, but they're only, I'd use the analogy of a young soul, like a young man or woman, like, a young student. And people obsess about, I need my kids to have financial literacy and, understand numbers. And I said, great. But if you're layering more education on top of low self-esteem, so when I work with young people, which I have historically done, talking in schools, etc., and it's very much a contribution thing for me. It's something I love to do. And I work with young people 14, 15, 16 years old. Their biggest challenge is self-esteem, is value, is identity. They don't really know who they are, and they don't really feel tremendously good about themselves. There's no education in the world that will fix that. It will basically layer on top like Band-Aids or plasters, but it won't actually get to the core. And the same principle applies. So if you think about that gentleman last night, what a soul. Oh my God. I mean, what a beautiful man. And it's sad to see this man, going out into the world, doing stuff every day that he really doesn't want to do because he feels he needs to pay the bills and be successful because his parents, particularly his father, understands what he does here, but doesn't get what he does here. And yet this is where his heart lies. This is where his passion lies. And when we tracked it all back, the reality is he's seeking validation from his father. He wants his father to see him as a success. And if you think about it, and I believe that we are obsessed by what people think about us in this world, you can take that and multiply it by 100 or 1,000 when it comes to our parents. So we will literally live our entire lives to try and impress our parents.
Whether we know it or not.
We know it or not.
Okay.
So I have a question for not just you, but a question for the audience listening here is, who are you seeking validation from?
To watch the rest of this fascinating interview, click on the link below and go to londonrealacademy.com. There you can sign in with your social media, log in and watch the rest of the episode for free, along with all of our episodes on London Real, my webinars, and all of our premium content, all located over at londonrealacademy.com. So click on the link below, you'll be directed there and you can watch the rest of this fascinating interview, and I'll see you there.
It's her father. It would be unusual. Except for her father.